I want to have a bit of a deep chat about transfers, if you don't mind. We'll start off with the centre forwards area in particular. We may well stick with centre forwards, see how we get on. Because it has become a hot topic, an area up for debate, up for discussion, however you want to really sort of frame that. We've seen Diaz do it recently. Some success, some not so success, I think it's fair to say. A bit sacrificial there for me. A facilitator of sorts, but not quite the natural at it, I don't think it's fair to say. Obviously we know Darwin Núñez. We very much know Darwin Núñez. Diogo Jota is currently fit, currently available, which is good, but that isn't necessarily always the case. It feels like, Paul, and I'll touch on some names in a moment, but just from a general sense point of view, it feels like that is a big area, because although Liverpool are ticking along very, very nicely right now, domestically and of course in Europe, like there's still such huge question marks over the 9.
Yeah. I think it's Liverpool's biggest issue for the summer in terms of recruitment. You know, the contract issues are still there, and that, you know, all in remains the biggest issue for Liverpool. But in terms of bringing players to the club this summer, the number 9 is the one that I feel is going to need the most work, the most attention. You know, you can make the debate for the left back situation with Tsimikas and Robertson, who has not had his best season. But that forward line now, you know, Diogo Jota fitness has been a major issue across his entire, was it now, nearly 5 years at Liverpool. You know, his last Premier League start was October the 20th against Chelsea. So you're getting up to 4 months now. If he doesn't start against Wolves on Sunday, he's probably going to go past the 4-month mark in between Premier League starts, which is nearly half of an entire season. Darwin Núñez, very, very hit and miss. Thought he played really well against Tottenham last week, you know, to give him his due, but, you know, that'll be, the end of the season will be 3 years into his Liverpool career, and I think we know what we're getting from Darwin Núñez week to week. Is it a player who's going to be good enough to lead the line for the coming X amount of seasons? Probably not. I think that's probably fair to say now. You know, he's only scored 6 all season. So it's a big issue for Liverpool to resolve. I don't think the Luis Diaz experiment is working now. I think it did with explosive results against Bayer Leverkusen when it first got trialled in whenever that was it November? He scores a hat-trick, but you're getting sort of diminishing returns from it now, I find. Don't think he scored this calendar year.
He's assisted this calendar year, to be honest. No, I think you're
right. So just getting back on the left, fighting for the place with Cody Gakpo. He's probably behind Gakpo at the moment in terms of starting that position, because I think Gakpo is becoming increasingly influential, you know, Derby Day aside. So there is a situation for Liverpool to resolve there. Now, the big question is, what does Arne Slot want from his number 9? Because we've seen this sort of the huge change in game that Darwin Núñez has had this season. You know, last year he was the chance magnet, shoot on sight policy. He was getting chances left and right. He was scoring some, he was missing more. And it was this idea that if he could just sort of keep his composure at the key moments, you start to see the goal return massively skyrocket. Now it's dropped this season, hasn't it? I think he scored, at this stage of last season and his first season, he scored well more than 6. Mm-hmm. I think he ends last season on 18. Season before was 15. So he's got to do well to get near to 15, isn't he? He's got to score another 9.
Yeah.
Can you see him scoring 9 between now and the end of the season? Hopefully, you know, it means Liverpool are going to win more games, but the jury is out on that. So I think Slot needs to have a look and really sort of drill down on what he wants from a number 9, and then you go and look at what type of profiles are out there to suit what you want your number 9 to do. Primarily score goals, of course, but there are other aspects to it. So I think this is really an interesting situation for Liverpool now this summer, and I think it's the one that supersedes any other in terms of they might need a left back, could do with another midfielder, what happens at centre back, but who's going to be leading the line next season is the big one for me.
Yeah, I agree, and it's such a instrumental, integral part of any side as well. Obviously, they all have massive parts to play, of course they do, but yeah, the 9, such focus and such attention is on who's leading the line for any football club, but certainly one that's just actually Liverpool. We've had some brilliant ones down the years, and obviously Darwin Núñez has been that in fits and starts, likewise Diogo Jota, but for a variety of reasons, neither of them feel like the perfect fit, and I'm with you on the Diaz thing. I think that experiment has probably just about ran its course. Cue a hat-trick against Wolves at the weekend, of course, but Cody Gakpo might have been available, but I think the dovetailing and the competition over on the left side was a better fit for both of them personally. Yeah. You mentioned it, Darwin Núñez's numbers just don't stack up, quite frankly. 6 goals, 5 assists and 33 appearances so far this campaign. For somebody we paid an eye-watering sum of money for, who is supposed to be our number 9, it's just not enough. And as we know about Diogo Jota's injury concerns, that leads us on to a potential name. Now, whether we think this is the right profile stylistically and right fit for what Arne Slot wants is a different question altogether. The way I'm going to sort of suggest this to you, Paul, is that there's been a report from Team Talk claiming Alexander Isak will be interested in move to Liverpool. Liverpool will be interested in bringing him to Anfield as well. 120 million is the figure that's been suggested. I know. That's kind of the key point in this, really. 17 Premier League goals this season. Wonderful footballer. Like, absolutely wonderful. And seemingly, touch wood for his sake, injury issues potentially slightly behind him, because that was always the big red flag with Isak. Yeah, but that doesn't seem to be quite so problematic now. He's become a bit more durable. Maybe it was a time thing about being in the Premier League. Who knows, of an age thing maybe. But anyway, 120 million. The seismic change of foot, it feels like, when it comes to the number 9 position at Liverpool. Is there a world? Because that's only, a few million more than we were tempted to pay for Caicedo at one point. For something so potentially transformative and so important to what Arne Slot wants. Liverpool have shown in the past that they're kind of willing to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you mentioned Caicedo there, and that is the obvious example to use in terms of if Liverpool feel that this player is a game changer for them, they will go and put the money on the table, and certainly there for Caicedo. The interesting thing for me is how much those sorts of strange few days across August, was it 2023, just what happened there behind the scenes, because it was an incredible sum of money. It would have outstripped the club record fee for Van Dijk by 35 million. That was nowhere as
well, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there was the talk of Liverpool needing a number 6. Romeo Lavia, a couple of bids for him rejected, and Liverpool were willing to go and pay more than double for Caicedo. So how much of that was basically Klopp, who was leading the club at the time? How much of that was him saying, look, we need this number 6, let's just go and do it? How much was he in the ear of Mike Gordon at the time to loosen the purse strings? Jörg Schmacker was in as a sort of facilitator of transfers, but he didn't have anywhere near the sort of power that Richie Hughes would have now, and certainly Michael Edwards above him. So I don't know how much of that crazy period was down to Jurgen Klopp just absolutely demanding a defensive midfielder, or how much of it was the club feeling that this is the game-changing player that we need, and let's go and try and do it. Obviously, it didn't get over the line. Ultimately, it saved Liverpool a fortune, really. So, does Isak come into that category, that conversation of game-changing player who we're going to go and break the bank for? I think he's a fantastic player. I'd love to see him leading the line for Liverpool next season, but Newcastle not really in a position where they need to sell their best players, are they? Maybe PSR issues were there last year, but they've certainly got no financial problems. So unless there are major sort of PSR gaps that they need to fill like they were last year, I don't think they'll be willing to hand them over lightly.
No, not likely, no, far from it, no. And you're right, I was going to bring up the PSR thing, but if you have managed to circumnavigate that particular issue, then yeah, the requirement to sell big assets might not be there. But it mentions in the article, and it kind of goes without saying, that he will want regular Champions League football. He's certainly of that calibre, he's of that level to suggest that that's the case. Regular trophies is also mentioned, so Liverpool have an opportunity on the 16th of March to show him what that looks like, potentially firsthand, which would be nice, of course. But yeah, whether it's Liverpool or not, I think the possibility of him leaving Newcastle isn't the most far-fetched of ones, because whilst Newcastle want to be in amongst the top 4 year in, year out, fighting for silverware, Premier League, etc., that needs to happen quickly, because he's 25, which obviously isn't quite in his prime. You'd argue might be in his prime, but he hasn't got 3-4 years to wait around, I guess, really. No. So, yeah, it doesn't feel the wildest of possibilities to me. And I would suggest that he is someone, when it comes to sort of like the joined up thinking, because you said there, the manager demands one thing, and does that outweigh sort of the strategy behind your sporting directors, Michael Edwards, Richie Hughes, et al. But I think Isak ticks all of the required boxes in many ways, and would be the sort of player, the game changers you said, whereby you do just go, do you know what, he's worth every single penny of that. Yeah,
I mean, from Newcastle's easy for me to say, Newcastle's perspective, it would be a chance to, I mean, the fans would low to lose him, of course. He's a fantastic player, but if you get a huge amount of money for him, you can bring in with a little bit of a supplement, maybe 3 or 4 players that really go and bolster your chances of becoming a top 4 club for the following season and for the few seasons afterwards. I think Newcastle's recruitment in the last sort of 3-4 years has been superb, to be fair. You know, they've totally restructured that team, and every one of their players now you look at and think, he's quite good. You know, he could do a job at Liverpool, he could do a job at whoever. So could they do that with a big chunk of Alexander Isak money? It just depends what their PSR issues are like, and I guess we'd have to speak to journalists connected to that club to understand a little bit more. I know last year they had to sell Yankuba Minteh to Brighton, wasn't it? Elliot Anderson to Nottingham Forest to avoid them having to sell Anthony Gordon. So they've managed to keep hold of the players they wanted to, really. But are they going to be in a similar situation again this summer? I don't know. If they are, then there is potential to exploit there. But I think Arsenal are in a similar boat as Liverpool, even more of a desperate boat, really. That, you know, they absolutely do need the number 9. So yeah, there will be interest in Alexander Isak, I suspect. And I'd love Liverpool to be part of the conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, not half. Yeah, the PSR thing is just dawned on me now as we were talking. I think it got announced yesterday that that's sticking around, doesn't it, for another season? So that's not going anywhere. So yeah, may well come up and rear its ugly head again from a Newcastle point of view. But yeah, I'm reticent to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's kind of my job. If Liverpool were looking to make an upgrade, and it is very upgradable, that position, then you could live in a world where you do sell 2 of the 3 options you've got there, which is seemingly Darwin, Jota and Diaz, and get more or less the entire kitty's worth. Basically. Yeah. Just shy, supplement is the word. You have to add to it a little bit. But yeah, that feels doable to me and quite exciting as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk of Darwin Núñez interest from Saudi Arabia clubs, hasn't there? AC Milan certainly keeping tabs on the situation. I think if Liverpool are open to offers this summer, he could bring in a decent amount of money that could go towards a direct replacement. It's tough getting a number 9 at the moment. We've seen Arsenal reluctant to take a plunge on anyone, really, in the last couple of seasons. You know, they got Kai Havertz, and then this idea that they're desperate for a number 9 has sort of increased in those 2 seasons since. And they're yet to do it. Certainly tried to get Ollie Watkins in January, didn't do it, and then they are now sort of strikerless for the foreseeable. You know, Manchester United spent a fortune on Rasmus Højlund, sort of flattered to deceive so far. You know, where else are we looking? Chelsea haven't really got one of the, you know, Manchester City are sort of the outlier in this with Erling Haaland, who's, you know, the greatest goal scorer of his generation. But to have that, you have to sort of accept the trade-off that comes with it, which is sometimes periods of anonymity in big games. You know, so few touches if he's not scoring, he's not involved, essentially. So yeah, there's a bit of a dearth of elite number 9s out there. So Isak is certainly one of them. So I imagine that there will be interest in him, considering the fact that clubs probably feel that they can get him out of a club who aren't necessarily challenging for in the Champions League and challenging for the Premier League.
Yeah, it does feel ever so slightly doable to the Newcastle fans. Well, not thank me for saying that, but factual. Finally, and it's on a similar sort of vein of topic, so we'll stick with it. Our Discord chat this week, our Discord question rather this week, came from Danzy the Goat. Yeah, and me. There are rumours, love you Danzy, there are rumours this summer could be a big reset, in inverted commas. Is this the general feeling? Now, I guess it kind of, again, ties into what we're saying here. Like, as well as things are going on the pitch, and mark my words, they're going brilliantly well, which is why I don't really like having these conversations, but again, whatever. It does feel as though something big is afoot, because I guess when you factor in Arne Slot would be a year and a bit into the job, he'll have had more time to assess his squad, what he does and doesn't like. You know, we've seen people improve, we've seen people, you know, regress in terms of where they're at, in terms of their own performances. So almost regardless of how the season ends, hopefully it ends gloriously and silverware bathed, it feels as though the summer could be a big one.
I mean, it depends on what Slot feels. Him and Justus Hughes made the point when they came to the club that decisions were going to be taken once the squad had been fully assessed. And I think Slot looked at that and thought, yeah, I've got a good group of players here, certainly the best group of players that he's ever worked with. And so far they've shown that, haven't they? To be fair to them, no one has let the manager down at all season. Top of the Premier League, 7 points. Champions League, they won the inaugural sort of 36-team group stage and have set themselves up favourably for the last 16 tie as well. So it's going absolutely swimmingly on the pitch. So I wonder whether Slot would look at it and think anything needs particularly dismantling. There are tweaks that you can make. I think left back is an area. We've spoken at length about the number 9, which is the big one for me. But other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot there. Endo might move on because I think, he hasn't started a Premier League game all season. He's got a very specific role in that squad. But does he want to move on? There was interest last summer from, I think it was Marseille.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So will he want to move on for the final years of his career and go and play a bit more regularly? Then there could be a midfield targeted in terms of coming in there. But I don't think it's a situation that needs totally ripping up and starting anew. So the Diaz situation could be interesting. There's been talk of him, hasn't there, for a while now, with Barcelona seemingly leading a chase. But I don't think it's going to be wholesale changes to the squad. Whatever happens between now and the end of the season, really, it might just be minor tweaks. And I think the big one could be at number 9.
Yeah, and so much hinges on the contract, lads, as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because you might be looking at a right back, a new centre half, etc.
Yeah, and particularly in the manner of their departures, if they do leave, Liverpool not going to get any money in. So to replace 3 starting players, you're not going to get a like for like in terms of a centre back who's going to come in and repeat what Virgil van Dijk is doing game to game. You're certainly not going to do it with Mohamed Salah and what he's done this season and what he's done across the course of his Liverpool career. So, paying out for players who are even going to come close to what they're doing this season is going to cost you an arm and a leg. So, I think there is a little bit of let's just sort of wait and see what needs to be done. Very moving parts, spinning plates is always the phrase that gets thrown at us when we're having these conversations with people at the club. So, yeah, a lot of plates being spun, but at the moment I think it is just sort of all, to coin another analogy, all hands on deck, and everyone just sort of focused on getting towards the end of the season and seeing what can happen.